So dudes, Ubisoft seems to think that there are 9 types of siege operators. And this is a system that they've used to kind of codify the operator designs and make them into a more palatable, digestible sort of thing so that people don't get overwhelmed by the sheer volume of the characters. And I don't hate the idea of it, but there are a couple of questions that I have about it. For example, if you click on Intel, we have a lot of operators here that make sense, right? Solus, okay, I changed my mind. This is a conversation that's circled around, right? Kudos was talking about this, like Thermite is a support, but Ace is not a support, which is like the criteria for the labels is very strange. And I think there are ways to improve it. Like Melusi is here with her traps, but then Legion isn't there, even though I think Legion plays off of his traps in a much more intel-based way than maybe even Melusi does. So in this video, I want to talk about these operator characterizations, if we want to call them that, and how to think about making lineups a little bit differently. By the end of the video, you should feel a bit more comfortable coming up with your own lineups that your friends won't refuse to do when you call these in Discord. Then at the end of the video, I'll do a little trick to give even more specializations, in air quotes, to these operators that you probably didn't consider before. Oh, and by the way, check out my Twitch, Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. We play some Ranky. Go to twitch.tv, Gwen posting TTV, or click the link in the description. So in order to do this, I have taken the operator list from the website and kind of made a little collage here. And I have these labels of my own that somewhat, might overlap with the Ubisoft isms, but I've also added my own isms. That didn't come out right. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna work my way from the bottom to the top, and I'm gonna describe the primary characteristic, right, in my eyes, of what that operator kind of entails. Now, there can be categories where the roles tend to overlap. For example, we have Capkin, who is a trap operator with an explosive, but this is an explosive that is not necessarily designed to destroy enemy gadgetry. So that's a whole separate category. So let's go down the categories. And these, I've just taking room, right, to place these. They're not placed here for any particular reason. So this is fire. This is area denial, right? Obviously, we're going to give this to Tachanka pretty soon. Shield. Gadget denial. That's what the cancel sign is. Gadget destruction, right? This would be given to somebody like Ash who can get rid of barbed wire. Nerd emoji is just info, because you know a lot. Map control. Health. Trap. We already went over that. And then stealth, which is kind of a separate category unto itself. Oh, and I almost forgot, and I have notes here on my phone, so forgive me if I don't maintain eye contact. Capkin is a quintessential trap operator. So we can get hung up on how the trap is deployed, what kind of damage it, entails, but the core functionality of it being a trap is what is important here, because that's going to affect how you place him strategically. So this is a strategic list, not necessarily a tactical list. Tachanka is area denial. And the reason that I say area denial is because I consider area denial a separate category from crowd control. Area denial kills people, right? Crowd control is more like a tacit suggestion. And we don't really have crowd control as a category in this list, because I think that's more synonymous with map control for the purpose of talking about 70 different freaking characters. Crowd control slows your movement, stops you from moving, right? Area denial doesn't really do anything in and of itself. It just, strongly suggests that you move or die because there's fire on the ground. So area denial doesn't make people stop being in a place unless they're dead. So fire operator is obviously in the area denial category. Glaz is a sniper. Duh. It's not a very distinct logo, but I think you can figure it out. Fuse, also area denial. His hockey pucks kill you if you stand in them. Do they have a destroying quality to them? Yes, but I think that the core functionality, most of the time, the primary thing that Fuse can do is stop people from moving in a post plant or move people out of a position when you're trying to get map control. And so we'll kind of see this list build over time. IQ is an info operator. Her scanner detects gadgets. Now, we have different distinctions about how the info was gathered, but at the core of her kit, she's an info character. Blitz is a shield operator. Bandit is a denial operator, right? His job is to deny wall with electricity. So he is purpose built to deal with the gadgetry of the game. Jaeger denies in a different way. He's a grenade catcher, but he is still functionally a denial operator, right? He denies utility. Rook is a health operator. So is Doc. The health that they give is distributed in different ways, but they're still at their core health operators. Twitch, denial operator. Huge mirror counter. Get rid of bandit boxes, cade sticks if you can. Sniping those gadgets from afar because the Twitch drone shoots in a straight line from whatever distance you want. Deny cameras. Very much a denial character. Monty is a shield. I almost forgot the breach category. I just realized that, okay, I'm just not even gonna edit that out. I am what I am. Thermite is a breach character. He forcefully blows the map apart in a novel and strategically significant way, right? He interfaces with the map destruction mechanics. So that's his core kit. Now you'd be surprised to know that this, particular job isn't as numerous as you think. But that's kind of what I like about this visualization, right? I don't like this scope. Hold on, I'm gonna find an alternative. There we go. That gets the point across much better. All right, let's keep it moving. Pulse, info operator, right? He detects people at a short distance, but at its core, that's an info gathering kit. Castle, map control. So the reason that I consider Castle a map control operator, and I wrote this down, is because he is specifically designed to give the defense, and in some cases the attack, right? If you're playing Raura, for example, a certain level of spacing that you normally wouldn't have. So you get to have different playing positions as a result of a castle barricade being on the board than you otherwise wouldn't, and you force the attackers to navigate the map in a different way. So for example, Coastline, that double door by Aqua, it's not uncommon for Castle to barricade that off, then make a rotate next to it that forces people on the attack to have to go through the rotate if they can't deal with the castle barricade. So that's map control because it gives you more pool table map control. Ash is a destruction character. Her kit, right? She has a thing that gets rid of a BP or a barbed wire. You get rid of it, you take a gunfight, right? You get things out of the way. You remove utility. The Thatcher is like kind of in between a denial and a destruction character because, he doesn't destroy them outright, right? Because he has EMPs, he stuns the gadgets. So I'm going to put an asterisk next to this. There's a case to be made that he, in effect is a destruction character just for a certain period of time. But because, the gadgets come back online later, I'm going to give him a denial category. Smoke, area denial. Sledge, obviously a breacher, right? He works from above and then goes below. He doesn't have the same kind of versatility that Buck does, but a secondary functionality is getting rid of castle barricades. So in a sense, he's also a destruction character. Mute is a denial operator. Duh. He denies wall. Frost, trap operator. Quintessential trap operator. Buck, breacher, but his interaction with the breaching mechanics is different, right? Because he can go from below and he can breach from a distance. So he has a verticality option that Sledge does not have. So he's not the same operator as Sledge, but he effectively breaches with a different method of delivery, right? The method of delivery isn't what's important here. The core functionality of what that character does is what we're trying to outline. Valkyrie is an info character, right? She places info wherever she wants. Blackbeard is a shield. He's really annoying at that, but he's a shield nonetheless. Capital. I consider his primary function to be the mollies, the fire. Now, you can make a case that he's also a map control operator because of the smokes. But because everybody, has smokes in different variations, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in depth later at the end of the video, at the end of the day, he is, in my opinion, his core, right, unique functionality is having the mollies. Cav, you can see where I forgot to record all the way up there, is a stealth character. So that's a really interesting category that not a lot of people really get to occupy. You can take a wild guess who else has the stealth category. Just because she's not necessarily good doesn't mean that she's not a stealth operator. It's really hard to balance a stealth character without making them overpowered. But her core functionality, right, isn't really like any of these things, right? Her functionality is reducing the noise output to get kills, or interrogations, right? You could make the case that she's an info character, but like the way that she gets the info is through interfacing with the stealth mechanic. Okay, and then we got Echo, primarily, right? 2 drones, info, duh. And he denies plant too. Habana is a breaching character. Very unique breaching character at that. You don't really see a lot of her in comp these days, but I still like playing her because her gun is really fun to use. The calling card is that she is very efficient with hatch destruction. So only Habana can destroy 4 hatches in a given round completely by herself, right? She's the only character that is that self-sufficient when it comes to hatches. Jackal is an info character. Mira is a map control character, right? Because she forces people to fight for a position. A good example is Oregon with a very linear layout for bunker, right? She maintains bunker control. She has presence in blue bunker that no other character has. So she provides a considerable amount of map control with the threat of gunfights. Legion is a trap operator. Got it done. Ying I would also consider in some ways a map control operator. And the only reason is because the flashbangs, in effect, what they do is they provide space for a gunfight. So you flash somebody, they either run away or they take the gunfight with you and die, right? If they chow you. So that in essence is leveraging engagements, forcing engagements as an attacker. That's map control 101. Ella, trap operator. Zoph, destruction operator, right? Get rid of a deployable shield with the thing. You can make the case, hybrid kind of info gatherer, see if somebody's around a corner with the Zoph launcher. But at the end of the day, I think that, the destructive capability is what makes, Zoph. Takebi, pretty obvious. Info character. Vigil, great stealth character. Really balanced stealth character. Cloak for the cameras. One of the few instances I think of making a stealth character in a way that's not, completely overtuned. In a smart way. Very good character design. Finka. Finka is a health operator, right? Which is a very unique case for the attack. Info character. Scan, wait for people to move, right? Or force people to move, and then you get actionable information based off of that. Now, some might look at Alibi and be like, oh, info. That's true. That's true. That is a functionality. But how do you get the info, right? What comes first? It's a trap, right? They shoot the trap, and then you get the info. Maestro, info at the jump, right? He doesn't have to do anything to get info, right? There's no condition to be met. Maverick is a breacher, one of the better breachers. He counters everybody, right? He is the skeleton key for whatever resources the defense is bringing. Maverick will be able to get through it no matter what. Now, it's not always going to be efficient, but it will happen one way or another. He has counters, right? C4, there's a lot of downsides. Clash is a shield. Very unique case for the defense. Cade, denial, right? Especially through hatches. That's like a really important functionality for him. Nomad, map control, lockdown flanks. Good for hard corner geometry, especially staircases where that's relevant. Gridlock, if you don't have anything to put an air jab on, right? The geometry is kind of wonky. You bring a gridlock. Not exactly the same, kind of effect, but similar job. Mozzie, like some people might make him an info character here, but again, what's the first thing that happens, right? He's not guaranteed info. He is a denial character, right? Because he denies drones, right? He forces drones away from, single doorways, right? Drones cannot pass through that threshold unless somebody deals with a resource. So he gets info as a result of the denial eventually, and in many cases. But this is, the initial, right, like core function of the Mozzie Pest is to keep drones from going through doorways. Warden. Primary function right now is denial of gadgetry, right? Denying flashes and smokes. So, denying smoke plant, that's a big one. Nuck is a camera cloak, so she's a stealth character. Goyo is an area denial character, but in order to obtain the area denial, you have to activate a trap. Amaru is a map control operator, and you're starting to see a pattern sometimes with some of these like really aggressive like fragger types. And you look at that and you're like, gosh, they just seem like a brain dead character, and it's not really, right? Like they're hitting a timing, they're forcing an engagement in an aggressive way, but the core function, right, for Amaru is that she gets to assert map control faster. Time is a resource, right, for the attack. she quickly obtains map control in certain contexts better than anybody else can. Good example is trying to clear Oregon Tower as fast as possible, right? If you get a drone up there, or you're able to get there in time to make sure nobody goes up the ladder and hide in T3, you work T3 down and you clear that as efficiently as possible. Callie is a sniper because sniping's a good job mate. And there's really, there's two characters in the game like this, Glaz and Callie. Wamai, grenade catcher. Deny. Yana is an info gatherer, right? She gets forever drones. Oryx traverses hatches quickly, map control. He can go vertical up through a map, right, given certain conditions, faster than any other defender aside from Scopos. So that is a really important component of his kit that I don't think it's talked about enough. He can maneuver around the map more quickly. That's map control. So you look at this, again, you see these like fragger characters and you're like, these are brain dead, right? These are just clickers. These are just click characters, right? Click on people. No, right? That's a functionality, right? That is a strategic functionality. Malusi is a trap operator. Ace is a breacher. From a distance, avoid C4, safest, most well-rounded option right now. Sam Fisher, aka Zero Info Gatherer, right? Obviously, right? Because of the cameras. Aruni is a denial operator, right? She denies movement. You can make the case, there's components of this that she kind of has both of these combined in one package. However, I think that, the chicken kind of comes before the egg in this scenario, and denying grenades, especially on windows for Chalet, top floor, right? That's a very prominent example of what makes Aruni shine as a denial character. Flores, in this special category, right? He is a destruction character, right? His job is just to get rid of utility. That's his core gadget function. And you may have noticed I'm not bringing this functionality up very much. That's because that's something we'll talk about at the end of the video. Thunderbird, unique case of being a health character. Not a lot of healers in this game, but she is one of them. She is in small company, but she is still there nonetheless. Osa, force engagements, right? Crosses that are advantageous to the attack rather than the defense. That's map control. Thorn, trap. Azami, map control. Map control. You wouldn't have thought of that, right? But she has a considerable amount of map control. Her whole kit is basically designed around people having to use a bunch of utility to move into a part of the map, right? Think clubhouse rafters, consulate admin, right? She makes this maze, or she makes this cover network in a zone that makes it easier for you to hold. What is that called? What is that called when you're forcing attackers to use resources to get into a certain part of the building? That's called map control. So, some people might look at this and be like, well, what the fuck is the point of this, right? Like, duh, Yana is an info character. But sometimes you have characters that, interface with the game in a unique kind of way. Like Azami, she makes bulletproof cover wherever she wants. What is that? What can I do with that? What is the strategic point of purpose that I can use for this character, right? Sometimes this lets you think about it a little bit differently. And so when you're coming up with lineups, if you have a problem that you're facing, right? Let's say that the attack is moving through the map a lot more quickly than you would like them to. You feel like, I feel like if we can just hold this for a little bit longer, what can I do to slow this down? Well, I can bring, some kind of map control character, and you can bring in Azami, right? So that's how you can sort of think of it instead of just looking at this giant list and being like, oh my God, there's so many characters. I don't know what to do. And then we have Sens here, map control, right? Because they make a big line of sight blocking wall, and you can aggressively take engagements that other people can't do. In a similar vein to Ying, even though that this is basically a smoke, right? Or like a Viper wall in Valorant, and this is a flash, both of these characters are doing the same thing, right? There's just different methods. And so the crux, right? The meat and potatoes of the game is the interactions and how the actual counters play out, right? The methods of delivery are different, but the core functions are the same. Grim, info gathering, right? Safe from a distance. Good character. Solus, info. I fucking love the nerd emoji, dude. Brava, denial, right? Because she denies cameras. That's a huge functionality for her. BPs, stuff like that. She counters so many different gadgets. Yes, she can also serve as an info gatherer, but that comes later, right? A lot of the time that can get shot, but the primary purpose of the gadget is to deny. right? When you see a Maestro, what do you think? Oh, I can bring in Brava, right? That's denial. That's a primary function. Fenrir, you know, I could consider him a map control character, but I'm going to put him in the trap category just because, you know, that's the actual core function of the gadget design. People run into the trap and then you play off of it. Ram is a breacher, right? She works vert from above very efficiently with the boogie cars. Tubarao, primarily a denial operator. He has some crowd control functionality with the ice, but his job, you know, primarily is to slow down gadget usage. Deimos, info gatherer. I'm sorry. This is just an excuse for me to use the nerd emoji. Sentry, striker. So maybe I can reveal my cards early here to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. Oh, I guess I'm just giving them everything. What's going on? Wait. Think about it. Just think about it. Scopos. This is a tough one. I'd say the teleporting functionality is what gives her a ton of map control, right? That ability to move around the map and have presence wherever she wants at any particular point in time. That is map control 101. And then Raora, also map control, right? Because she provides spacing. Okay, so we've given our operators labels. And one of the cool functionalities of doing this, I found, is that you can actually kind of find how the meta has changed and shifted and how the core design functionality of the game has evolved throughout different metas. As you can see here, right, we had a much bigger emphasis on utility destruction being like a core functionality of gameplay. And as of late, you know, we haven't really gotten a lot of like super just, you know, blow stuff up kind of characters. But there's a reason for that. When we look at, right, Flores's kit description here with the bomb, right? That's obviously what his primary gadget does. You noticed over here with Striker and Sentry that I gave them everything except for Sniper because they don't really have that. So, but why did I do that? Well, because their secondary gadgets all can occupy that function. So now, right, you ready for the trick? Here's what we're going to do. So Glaz is a sniper, right? But you know what else he can use? He can use a Gon 6. Now he's a sniper destruction character. Tachanka has a deployable shield. Map control. Monty, smokes, play for the plant. Map control. Who has a bulletproof camera? Goyo has a bulletproof camera. So he's an info character. Are you starting to figure it out? C4, right? You look here and you're like, geez, Gwen, I mean, you only gave area denial, you know, to like a couple of characters. That doesn't seem right. Well, you know, Ubisoft understands that, right? That's why they have secondary gadgets. Kate has denial and area denial. But C4, same thing with Tubarao, right? And then you combine Tubarao and a Cade, and then you have an extremely strong vertical pressure comp. Callie's gadget, right, is a destruction gadget. So there you go. Grim has EMPs. That's gadget deny. Zero has a Gon 6. That's gadget destruction. Hey, you want to hear something even crazier? Flank watch, right? What does free flank watch do with the Claymore? Ace has breaching and map control because he can Claymore off flanks. So now you're starting to see the ecosystem, right? You're starting to see how the gadgets have a particular kind of purpose and they all kind of intersect. But there's a million different ways that these interact and there's a million different ways that the actual, you know, gadgets function. And I understand, you know, looking at this initially can be really confusing. And I have to find a more, you know, coherent way, I think, to convey it with the better graphic. You know, graphic design is not my passion. But this does kind of get you to think about it a little bit differently, right? It does get you to understand like, oh, wait a second. Okay, like if I really need map control in this instance, like we're just getting, you know, just like flank after flank, I get a Nomad and then I have breaching charges if I really need it above, right? To kind of like leverage something, get things moving on the vert. I need info and I got to get rid of that BP camera. So I'll bring Zero, right? Because he has info and the Gon 6. So anyone with the Gon 6 has a destruction utility. Anybody with frag grenades has a destruction utility. Anybody with EMPs has a denial utility, right? All of this is a lot more interchangeable than you think. If you want a more professionally done graphic along these lines, let me know in the comments below and I can try to get like a commission or maybe, you know, do a better crack at it myself. We'll see. I hope this video kind of made the game a little easier for you to understand, and, you know, don't be afraid of the many operators. There's a million different ways to do the same thing in Rainbow Six Siege, but you can boil it down, right, to those 10 kind of mechanical concepts that I laid out. Thanks for watching. Deuces.